welcome back. Today I want to talk about my reading plans for 2025 and a little bit also about my TBR going into 2025. So let's get into it. I'm going to enjoy this bubbly while I do this. Now if I spill this on the bed, I'm gonna be very upset. So I'm going to start by talking a little bit about my overall goals for 2025 in terms of the types of books that I want to read and what I want to do with my reading this year, and then we're going to move into the TBR. So in terms of the goals, last year I really stayed away from a lot of books that would make me think, from any books that would challenge me ever so slightly intellectually, and I want to bring that back because I really enjoyed in the past reading nonfiction and reading classics. In fact, classics were probably the books that I would read the most in the past. Doing an undergraduate in literature helped to read more of those, but as time goes on and I'm doing something else outside of studying literature, it's becoming more and more challenging for me to find time and energy to really delve into classics the way that I like to do. This year, I am making it my mission to go back into reading classics as well as nonfiction. Now, I still want to be quite realistic about my goals. I know that I will not always have energy for a classic. Reading a classic of, say, 300 pages versus reading a contemporary work of 300 pages is like night and day. It could take me double or triple the time to read that classic as opposed to a more contemporary work. But nonetheless, I really enjoy classics. And so what I'm going to try to do this year is I'm going to set myself a goal of having a sort of ratio of the types of books that I'm going to read. So I'm going to try to do 30% classics, 30% nonfiction, and 40% anything else, like literary fiction, contemporary fiction, romance, fantasy, you name it. Now, I think this will also mean that I'll be reading less books than usual, because reading, as I explained before, classics takes me so much longer than reading any other book. So we'll see. I'm not gonna set a goal of read this many books. Setting myself that goal, I'm just going to be rushing to get to that number, and it will not be an enjoyable experience. So I'm going to stray away from putting a number on the amount of books that I want to read. My last goal would be I want to try to read at least one book written in another language. So I do speak a couple other languages, and any of those would be perfect. I just want to read something else than in English because predominantly I read in English, but I do speak French, Romanian, a little bit of Italian. Any of those languages would be fair game. Okay, so now let's move into the most exciting part, which is the TBR. I've compiled a TBR of 10 books. So there's a reason why I opted for 10. First of all, I wanted to kind of keep that ratio that I talked about in the beginning with 30, 30, 40. So with 10, I can easily divide 3, 3, 4. So I'll have 3 nonfictions, 3 classics, and 4 anything else, contemporary or slightly contemporary work. The second reason why I only chose 10 books is because I want to make it realistic for me to actually get to these books. And I also don't want to make my year experience of reading not fun. I feel like if you have too many books that you have set yourself up to get to, you won't have as much wiggle room to choose other books and to read according to your mood, according to the season, which is something that I love to do. So I just wanted to have 10 books that I really want to read, and then everything else is fair game, and I'll be able to, have an enjoyable time reading as well. So let's get to the first category, and that is nonfiction. I'm going to be talking about 3 books. Now, a little disclaimer, I feel like this is kind of common sense, but I do want to say that just because I'm reading someone's book does not mean that I agree with 100% of their ideas, but I think that's the point of reading nonfiction, to read about everyone else's ideas, whether you agree or disagree with them, and then see what could challenge you and how you could make your opinions evolve if that happens. So the first book that I want to get to is Making Sense by Sam Harris. Sam Harris is one of the most interesting philosophers of our time, in my opinion. I've followed a couple of his interviews where he talks about so many different topics, including politics, religion, philosophical matters. He comes from an educational background in neuroscience, and this book is a little bit more linked to his educational background in neuroscience because it talks a little bit about consciousness. It's also related to philosophy in some way, and I'm really interested to see how he merges the concepts from science and neuroscience to philosophical ideas. I think that's something that really interests me in his work. The interviews that I've watched with him are really capturing, like, he has such a easy way of delivering a very intellectually difficult concept in words that are just, I don't know how to explain, just like the perfect words to describe that specific thing. And this is essentially a compilation of interview episodes from his own podcast, where he interviews scholars from different fields, including neuroscience, economics, social sciences, very wide array of fields on the topics of consciousness. Here he discusses things about what consciousness is, why is it so difficult for us to understand what consciousness is and to really measure it scientifically. And he also discusses how our understanding of consciousness is related to future AI developments and how we can deal with those future AI developments as well. As you can see, I already started it. I'm like 100 pages through, so I'm really happy that I'm already ahead of my goals of 2025 because he has so many different interviews with different scholars. Some of them are more interesting than others, but in general, I'm really enjoying it and it really gives me a lot to think about. Okay, number 2 is a memoir. It's the Journal of Anne Frank. I'm not sure whether it would be considered a memoir as it were because it's just journal entries. This is the story of a young Jewish girl from Netherlands who kept a diary during the times of the Second World War while she was in hiding with her family, and she documented her experience as a Jew up until 1944 when her family was unfortunately discovered and they were all taken to a concentration camp. Following the aftermath of World War II, Otto, her father, was the only person from their family who was still alive when the Soviets came to the camp to release everybody, and he found his daughter's journals and he decided to try to publish them. I know that there's been some controversy around exactly how true everything is in the journals and how much has been edited out or taken out, and I believe that recently there's been excerpts that have been added to the journals, things that her father didn't want the world to see that she wrote about. And this thing has been sitting on my TBR for probably, I don't know, 5, 6, maybe 7 years, a very long time, and I just never really wanted to pick it up. I feel like it's a very grim topic and obviously it's going to affect me mentally, but I do really want to read it, so I'm going to do it this year. The next one is a very interesting person. Provocations. This is a collection of essays by, is it Camille Paglia? I'm not sure how to pronounce her first name. Paglia, I think it's Italian, it sounds Italian. Camille is a contemporary feminist, and I heard some of her interviews and she just captured me listening to how her mind works when she speaks. She speaks so fast, it seems that her mind is just going way faster than she is able to articulate in words. I think she is a very smart woman. I read that she has some very interesting takes on certain topics, like quite unhinged opinions. The things that I've heard in the interviews themselves, I really enjoyed the way she was expressing herself. I'm sure that I will not agree with everything she was saying in this book, but I do want to kind of get into a little bit more of her work and see what I agree on, what I disagree on, and see if she could maybe challenge my own views about certain topics. So this is a collection of essays that ranges from a multitude of topics, things like religion, education, media, like contemporary media, movies. I think I might actually skip a couple of the essays. Like I was just perusing it to see what essays are in here, and some of the essays are about, for example, some celebrities in contemporary media that I don't follow. Like I don't listen to their music or I don't watch their movies, so it's a little bit useless for me to read an essay about them because I don't even know who they are or what they do in the world. So I think I might skip those, but the majority of the essays I think I'll read them all. We are getting into the classics. The first classic that I want to read this year is The Bell Jar by Sylvia Plath. I put this book off for the longest time because I think you have to be psychologically okay to get to it. It's a very grim story about the demise of a young woman who is on the brink of kickstarting her professional career. She has this internship in New York, but because of depression and mental health issues, her career and everything else in her life is going to take a second place. I heard that this is partly autobiographical, like Sylvia Plath kind of wrote herself a little bit in this protagonist's life as well, and that's really incredibly sad. I think I might give this a go in the summer, and I think that's the only way to read this book, because the very first sentence in the story, which is very well known, starts with, "It was a queer, sultry summer, the summer they electrocuted the Rosenbergs, and I didn't know what I was doing in New York." The next book that I really want to get to this year is 1984 by George Orwell. This is a very interesting cover, so you can actually tell what the book is, but it's written here. So 1984 by George Orwell is the story of this average guy, Winston, and he is working for the government of a totalitarian regime where everything is kind of controlled, and every form of expression is essentially non-existent and illegal. We follow his journey partly through third-person narration, but also a little bit from snippets of his own journal diary, which is actually illegal. He's not supposed to have a diary because it's considered a form of self-expression and free thinking, and those things are banned in the society. I have no idea how the actual plot of this will develop. I'm assuming maybe some sort of rebellion of this totalitarian regime, but what I'm really excited about is to engage with the commentary on totalitarian regimes in general that Orwell put forward in this work. I also read Animal Farm a while back. I liked it, but I think because it was so short, I didn't really feel connected to the plot of the story or the characters or anything like that. Probably that's how it's supposed to be read anyways. You're not supposed to really connect with anything. It's just more of a commentary on, I believe, socialism, was it? It's been a while I read it. But I think this one will be a little bit different because it seems to be a full-length novel, so I'm really excited about that. Next, we have a book, a classic, that I barely know anything about, and that's kind of how I want to get into it, and that's Gabriel Garcia Marquez's 100 Years of Solitude. The only thing that I know is that it's a story of multiple generations of the Buendia family, and I think they live in a small town in Colombia, and there's a lot of discussions about politics and history of the country. Every single person that reads this book, they put it on their all-time favorite books list. So I'm really excited. I really want to get to it this year. I'm not a really big fan of magical realism. I feel like when it's not overpowering the plot, I can deal with it. When there's too many magical aspects, for me, it takes away from the credibility and the reality of the story itself. So it kind of makes me almost not be able to relate to the story and to accept the story as a potential reality, as it were. So I'm interested to see how I'm gonna feel about it in this book. So that is the last classic that I really want to get to this year. Okay, we made it to the last category of this TBR, and that is general fiction. The first one that I want to get to is an author that is very popular. A lot of people like his work. He won the Nobel Prize in 2017, and that is Kazuo Ishiguro, and the book that I picked up from him is Never Let Me Go. So at the moment I have Never Let Me Go and Clara and the Sun on my shelves, but I think this one I will like it a little bit more just based on the synopsis of the book. It seems to be a little bit more related to my own interests. And it's the story of an adult woman called Kathy who reminisces about her past while she was at a private boarding school in England with two of her friends, Ruth and Tommy. And that is really the extent to which I know what is happening in this book. I think it's going to be a little bit unhinged and crazy shit is gonna happen. But I'm really, really excited about it, and it seems to be pretty tiny. So yeah, I'm gonna get to Ishiguro this year. Really happy about that. The next book, I think this could be considered a classic to some people. I didn't know whether I should put in the classic section or the general fiction, but it's my video and I make the rules. I guess it could be considered a classic, but I just put it here because it's fantasy. and I'm so late to the game, but that is The Lord of the Rings by J.R.R. Tolkien. I received these beautiful, beautiful editions for Christmas this year. I just finished Harry Potter series last year, and so I'm ready to get into the next big thing, which for me in my reading journey is The Lord of the Ring. I try to watch a couple of the movies in the past and I always fall asleep. They're so long. Does anyone else have this experience with the Lord of the Rings? I don't know why. Like they're so long and the story and the journey goes on forever. But I think it's gonna be much of a different experience for me reading the actual book, starting with The Fellowship of the Ring, because I don't know, when you read books, you already know it's gonna be a long process, so you're ready for that and you read it in increments as well. I don't know much about the story. I know it's the story of this magical ring that a cast of characters are trying to save or to get away from this dark Lord Sauron. I heard that the story is really wholesome. I heard that there's a lot of nature elements and descriptions of the story. It's just a beautiful journey where there's so many beautiful relationships between this cast of characters that is going along for this journey, and I think I'm going to pick it up during spring. I don't know why. This screams spring to me, like maybe it's just the cover. But I think it's going to be a beautiful, beautiful journey, and I'm so excited to embark on it. The third book in the category of general fiction will be a spooky kind of autumnal pick, and that is The Very Secret Society of Irregular Witches by Sangu Mandana. This has been making the rounds on YouTube. I mean, every single person that I follow on YouTube has read this already. I have not come across yet a person saying they don't like this book. And it's the story of this witch, Mika, who goes to a secluded house to take care of 3 kids, and also not just take care of them, but teach them about magic. And from there, she gets to unravel some family secrets and develops this romance with a beautiful librarian. I feel like this will be the perfect little palate cleanser type of book. It's something that will just be very wholesome and very atmospheric for autumn. And we made it to the last book. I do not have a physical copy. I might buy one or I might just read the book on Kindle. But that is Emily Wild's Encyclopedia of Fairies by Heather Fawcett. This book is like literally going crazy on YouTube right now. Everybody and their mom is talking about this book, and I just feel so left out. I read last year Ember and the Ice Dragons by Emily Fawcett, and I really enjoyed it. It was a cute little middle grade set in the Arctic, and I'm really excited to get into more of Heather Fawcett's works. For this specific one, we are following a professor who travels to a land in which fairies exist to study them. I love anything that has to do with an academic setting or academia, light academia, dark academia. I love it all. I love those undertones. So I'm pretty sure I'm going to enjoy this very much. I also heard that it has beautiful wintry descriptions as well. I think I might pick it up maybe in March because here in Canada we still have snow going up until like April. I love snow, I love winter, I love wintry scenery, but when I get to March, I'm like, okay, I'm done. So I think picking this up in March while we still have snow and it's still going to be snowing and we have snowstorms is going to help me to romanticize a little bit my then current context of snow everywhere around me. So I'm really excited about that, and that is the last book on my 2025 TBR. Thank you for watching this video and see you soon.